Hello and welcome to EIST 608160 Designing Learning Systems with Simulation and Game Technology. We are in week 2 or module 2 of our course, and this week we are going to be talking about the use of video games in an instructional system, and then basically we're going to look at what people are specifically doing with video games around learning. We're going to do this specifically about video games for a couple of reasons. Number one is that they're a relatively new field of study for their use in education. They've only been doing this for 30 or 40 years, so that's relatively new if you look at the whole picture of education in general. And then secondly, if you are designing an online course or materials that are based online, then if your instruction is being presented in an online format, then most likely this is the type of games you're going to be using, these video or screen-based games, if you will. So that's why we're going to stop and just take a look at some different things going on in this field right now as it applies to games in our course, and hopefully it'll all kind of fit better together for you. This week and this week's module, just a quick overview. We've got some good readings there for you to look at. They are going to dig deeper into high levels of looking at game analysis and design, and then classifying games of all types in general, and how do you classify them, and where do they go. That's really what we're talking about here for the research on video games in this one, but in those readings you're really talking about games in general. We also have the discussion board down there, discussion board number 3, and for that you will be actually taking some of your readings and applying them and putting them into that discussion. Then there's an assignment that asks you to take some of what we have doing in this e-lesson and then actually summarize it and come up with some of your own findings that will help kind of put this into perspective for you. And then lastly, we have the reflection for this week. So there's really 3 areas of research going on with video games out there in the world. There's teaching tools, using games to teach or display content. This is what you would think of when you think about using video games. This is what everybody thinks about when they think about using games to teach with. They think about some game that's designed to teach the skill or the knowledge that you want them to have, your learner that is, and you'd build a game that does that. There's numerous upon numerous examples of this out there. Henry Jenkins was at one time one of the directors, I believe, of the MIT Game Lab. Microsoft poured a lot of money into the Game Lab, and they built some different games to go through and basically show the principle of if we build a game that can teach, it's an effective tool. And that's teaching tools. Everybody really thinks about that as that's the way you use games. There's also 2 other areas of research out there. There's one I call teaching strategies. And in this, you study how games teach, and you attempt to take the characteristics of those good games and you apply it to traditional learning settings. James G., who was at Madison, Wisconsin when he did a lot of this research, he's now at Arizona State University, but James G. was a big writer in this area for a long time. And then the third area is culture, and viewing games as a culture to be understood, and then using them in order to reach the culture that you're trying to educate or to teach whatever it is that you might be trying to instruct on. Henry Jenkins, again, is a big player in this area, and he has really gone this way of late with his writings and his thoughts. So everything is about culture and media and how it all fits together. I want to take just a minute and talk about each one of these areas in a little bit more detail, but not a lot. Number 1, games as teaching tools. Games can support the development of logical thinking and problem-solving skills. There's 3 main ways that games motivate. That's fantasy, challenge, and curiosity. Mark Prinsky, who you've already read a little bit by, says his little phrase that you can think about is engage me or enrage me. It's the idea of a game can grab someone and get their attention and keep their attention, and otherwise you're going to lose them if you're not able to maintain their attention while you're trying to teach them something. Games are good at developing and teaching a lot of basic knowledge. They're very good for that. Anything that you might want to think of as something that needs to be memorized, something that can be repeated, games can be very good for that type of learning skill. They're good for repetition, obviously, because they give repetition and immediate feedback without fail, constantly, etc. So games as teaching tools are a lot of research out there on this, and a lot of ways that people are doing this. A lot of research recently around the game called Minecraft, which when I first saw it, I thought this is just Legos online. And it is to a large extent, but they mixed in a little bit of a role playing game in there where you've got some quest, if you will, some challenges you have to meet to go on, etc. And they have really spun that off. Microsoft bought the actual game Minecraft and has now also working to come up with a completely educational edition, the last I just read. There is such a thing out there right now, but they're going to make it an even more focused piece of their Minecraft education tools. So again, this is including a game like Minecraft because even though a lot of people would say, well, it doesn't directly teach a specific skill, i.e., like Reader Rabbit that teaches you phonics or that teaches you spelling, etc., it is able to teach you lots of other more what we might call soft skills like working together, reaching a goal, all those kind of things. Those pieces are all in there, and a lot of people that are using Minecraft are doing those type of learning activities with it while at the same time trying to design parts that actually teach specific curriculums with it also. So that's games as teaching tools. Next is we have games as teaching strategies. Again, this is a big area of research around the idea that says that good games, and we're talking about in particular good video games, are good teachers. And if we watch how they teach or we study how they teach, maybe we can take some of the cues from those games and use them in our traditional learning environments to make our learning more effective. So I'll read this quote here from James D. He said, "The learning principles that cognitive science has found work best for us are now being found in our games. Obvious reasons, games that can't get learned don't get bought. No one will buy a game that they can't learn how to play, so we need to get over the idea that games are not teachers, they are, and we should probably be looking at what they are doing." So what his basic premise here is that a video game in particular, again, is what he's talking about, is what he's referring to here, is a video game that does not teach well. A video game, by nature, has to teach you what to do in order to be successful. It has to teach you how to navigate, how to move, how to accomplish that goal that it's set before you. And if it can't teach you how to do that in a relatively quick amount of time with relative effectiveness, then most people will not recommend it to their friends, and i.e. it won't sell very much and it will go away. So his contention is that really big, good, popular video games are also very good teachers, and we should study how they teach. So he's come up with lots of lists, lots and lots of lists actually. But this is some of the top things, I guess, if you would, characteristics that he has noted of good games and how what they do. They're able to produce. You have to participate with the game or else nothing happens. You have to produce in them. You have to actually do something. Customize. You're able to modify the games. You are allowed to create different styles, set it to be harder, easier, a different type, customize your different things that you're going to do. Identity. Games give you an identity. Like you're a scientist. You are a military person. They let you play with an identity there and change it. They allow you to interact, built on interaction, if you will. You're interacting with an entire set of variables all around you, a world, a different group of people. They have well-ordered problems. They're problems that are created in a way that allow you to reach them but yet always have another problem just right on the outside of your edge. And that's part of the challenge. The challenge is there just enough to make you want to go to the next level and get there and know that you'll be able to do it. On demand and just in time is that they provide feedback that is exactly always in time and just right, and they encourage risk. So, and again, there are way more of these lists and stuff that he's come up with that are good examples of from games of how they teach. But just to show you one example of how this is actually being applied, what people would do is they would look at this and would say, okay, so let's take that very last one there where it talks about on demand and just in time. So if we look at that, on demand and just in time, how could we use that principle to design something? Well, what you might do in a traditional learning environment is you might use real-time feedback type of devices, so that like in a video game, you turn left, you get smashed, you turn left again, you get smashed. That's a quick and immediate feedback, and you're not going to turn left again if you wish to be successful. You're going to turn right or forward or backwards, whatever. In a traditional learning environment, that can be mimicked by using like the real-time data gathering devices. Some people call these clickers, the remote response units, where you have like a little keypad in your hand and you can press A, B, or C to a question that's answered, and up on the board the instructor can tell you how many people got that question right. It's great for formative assessment because it lets you know kind of how things are going out there. Some examples on online kind of pieces of this are called Nearpod, Nearpod.com, Nearpod, Nearpod.com. And Nearpod is basically this system that allows you to show a PowerPoint or something and then stop and ask a question, and everybody out there with any kind of device, a computer, a tablet, a phone, and it can reply to that, and then it pops up there on your screen with what the answer is and all that kind of stuff, and you can quickly gather data. That's an example of how this line of research works. And there's a lot out there about this. And then the third characteristic, or the third category, and this one is one that a lot of people don't see very quickly, but it's using games as a part of culture. Games and the game culture itself are a part of a bigger culture of the people who use them and of the places they're in, the organizations that they occur within, etc. So this research seeks to use games as a way to reach students, as a way to reach participants. This is by Linda Poland here. It says there are metaphors, analogies, exemplars, and perspectives that this culture holds that could be exploited if they were known. So the idea is that if you knew the games, if you knew at least a little bit about them and stuff, you could use that as a bridge into some of the lives of the students that you're working with, or some of the people that you're working with. It's a very elementary and proven principle that effective teachers create relationships and know who their students are, and they're able to then use that knowledge about them to instruct them, to reach out and give them metaphors, similarities, etc., that they understand. So again, this is big for Henry Jenkins and culture and media and how it all plays together. You can read a lot about that from him out there on where he thinks all that's going. So those are kind of the three big areas of research and what's going on out there in the world of video games. We want to wrap up with update on our final project for this week. What I want you to do in that discussion board, our discussion board that's out there, I believe it's discussion board number 3. I want you to not only do the assignment that's in there, part 1, which talks about doing some categorization and stuff, but number 2, part 2, I want you to give me an update on how things are going. What is the name of the company or organization you're planning to work with? Who have you reached out to? Who are you going to be working with? And what types of projects have you discussed with them? Like, what are you thinking about doing? What have you worked out with them that might be effective for both you and them? So that's where I want you to post. You got the week right now to work on that, from the beginning of the week till you have to turn this in to talk and to work and to find out some things that are going on out there. All right, well, that is it for the e-lesson for this week. I hope you find this material interesting and broadening to what goes on your perspective of games.